Friends, we need to talk about the Lincoln Memorial. Oh, I hope you guys are ready for some maps. I've been prepping to run a 1920s pulp adventure role-playing game. You may have heard of the system before. It's called Spirit of the Century by Evil Hat Productions. Except I think I might be bad at pulp fiction. I keep trying to build a story for my players that will lead to a rip-roaring adventure time, but my notes keep backsliding into the inevitable trauma of the Great War and the Spanish influenza, the ubiquitous nature of the Ku Klux Klan at this time, and the ticking time bomb of uncontrolled capitalism. I mean, who wouldn't want to play a game whose guiding principles are death to fascism and to hell with gender norms? Am I right? But as I'm building my GM notes, I keep getting distracted by the history of the 1920s, especially history related to Washington, D.C., where the game is going to begin. And I've got a little problem. I don't know where to put the fictional social club where my players are going to begin the game. I can't just tell them, oh yeah, the year is 1922 and you're in Washington, D.C. That's not good enough. I need to know where they are on a map. It's just very important to me. I am now going to attempt to draw the District of Columbia from memory. Oh, I do have blue. Yeah, I think I can make do with these. Okay. All right, so there's like the Potomac here. That island that's there. What is that river called? Starts with an A. Agostino? No, D'Agostino is a grocery store in New York. That is not the name of the river. And then DC is like, it's just like a square. It's just like they took a square and they plopped it on a river and they were like, yeah, seems legit. And then I'm pretty sure Georgetown is like up here. And then over here is Arlington. That's important later. This is definitely Virginia. This side, definitely MD for Maryland. I think Silver Springs, Maryland is like here. I think. Gotta have a little color on your map, so river, and you got another river. You know what, let's just do fabulous pink for the capital. Why not? That's the capital. Shoot, it's like on this grid, but it's like a weird grid because you have a normal person grid, and then you have these like intersecting lines. Got a grid for avenues because like the French guy who designed it was like, oh, we should have like a capital that you can like see fancy things. And there's like a lot of grid, so then it's not all just like a grid, because that's what happened in New York. Like they put the grid down on New York, and then they forgot that people like parks and stuff. By the way, there's no J Street, not because the guy who designed it hated John Jay. It's because in the Latin alphabet there's no J, and even then, I's and J's at the time looked way too similar. Just saying. And then I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on this, the mall is here, and then there's like a park, and then there's the Capitol, and there's the White House, and there's the Washington Monument. Yeah, okay, so this is useless. If only there was a place that had a huge collection of maps, like a library, a national library. Thank God for the internet! It is surprisingly hard to get a beat on what life was like in Washington, D.C. in the 1920s. It's far easier to get juicy, slice-of-life details about what life was like in New York or Chicago or hell, even Boston. D.C. just seems like the kind of town that really hates people. Come for a visit. Please don't stay. But if there's one thing I know about DC, it's that if I exit Union Station, I can find my way to the Smithsonian Institute, even if I were blindfolded and spun around a couple of times. So I'll just put my fictional social club somewhere around the National Mall. And that's where I got distracted.
Ooh boy, can't wait to click on some maps. Oh yeah, dated 1792. Look at that grid. Look at those intersecting avenues. Get those sight lines. Oh, a creek. Ooh, I love a good survey. Which one? Oh, look at all the buildings Union Station destroyed. Bye, warehouse. I bet these were all little places where people lived. Well, you know what? Let's just do fabulous pink for the capital. Why not? That's the capital. All right, so this is useless. If only there was a place that had a huge collection of maps, like a library, a national library. Thank God for the internet. It is surprisingly hard to get a beat on what life was like in Washington, D.C. in the 1920s. It's far easier to get juicy, slice-of-life details about what life was like in New York or Chicago or hell, even Boston. DC just seems like the kind of town that really hates people. Come for a visit. Please don't stay. But if there's one thing I know about DC, it's that if I exit Union Station, I can find my way to the Smithsonian Institute, even if I were blindfolded and spun around a couple of times. So I'll just put my fictional social club somewhere around the National Mall. And that's where I got distracted. Ooh boy, can't wait to click on some maps. At least the soda water place was safe. Gotta have that bubbly. Seltzer. Seltzer's very important. And this one's a 1921 map that shows the best driving route to see all of DC's greatest sights without actually having to leave your car, which just might be the most 1920s thing I've heard yet. Ugh, just look at that map! Huh, look at that. Lincoln Memorial isn't even on this map. Those are a lot of temporary buildings over there. Supposedly they belong to the Navy? I should look into that. Oh wow, there's a lot going on here. Ooh, a tour map. Wow, I hope you guys didn't have too many of these leaflets printed because by 1920, the Lincoln Memorial was pretty much completed. And it is definitely not here on your map. What is the deal with the Lincoln Memorial anyway? Wait a minute. There are 3 Lincoln Memorials. What's up with that? Before the memorial you might be familiar with was erected, there were already 2 Lincoln Memorials in Washington, D.C. One is located in Lincoln Park and is known as the Emancipation Memorial. It was dedicated on April 15, 1876. Frederick Douglass's speech at the dedication is probably one of my favorite retrospectives on Lincoln as man and president, and I highly recommend giving it a read. But this wasn't even the first memorial to be erected. That would be this fellow.
Funded by local citizens, it was placed in front of City Hall, which is now the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. It was unveiled April 14, 1868, 3 years after Lincoln's assassination. And it's alright. It's fine, if a bit understated. Definitely better than the monstrosity proposed in 1880. That one was never started, and thank goodness. I mean, 36 colossal bronze figures? That's a bit much. But the 1868 memorial was put in an awkward position, and it ended up getting rearranged a lot. It was moved into the middle of the intersection, then it was lowered 25 feet and moved to the sidewalk, and in 1920 it was straight up removed. The citizens of DC had issue with this.
I cannot describe to you my feelings a few days ago when I saw men engaged in taking it down. It seemed a sacrilege.
I felt the same way when I rode the updated Journey into Your Imagination on Epcot Center. There are just some crimes that can never be forgiven. Now, by 1920, the Lincoln Memorial we consider the Lincoln Memorial was practically finished. Now, the Lincoln Memorial Commission first met in 1911, and then President William Taft was the commission's leader. Okay, before we move on, no, Taft never got stuck in a bathtub in the White House. It was made up. It never happened. If you really want to give Taft grief over something, I present to you Buck v. Bell. It was the Supreme Court ruling that upheld that states could sterilize the unfit without their permission. There, I've given you something Taft actually did, and it's legitimately horrifying. You're welcome. Now, a couple of locations have been debated, but there was an extra special of placing the memorial in sight of Arlington National Cemetery. You know, the place that Robert E. Lee had called home. Construction would begin in 1914, would be completed by 1922, and would be dedicated that year on May 30th. Taft, now a Supreme Court judge, presented the memorial to President Harding, who accepted it on behalf of the American people. Lincoln's only surviving son, Robert Todd Lincoln, was present, and Robert Russell Morton of the Tuskegee Institute also gave a speech, which was mostly ignored or misreported on by the major white newspapers. Shocking. The memorial speeches were even broadcasted locally over the radio. The Frederick Daily News reported the next day that local radio enthusiasts found the president particularly clear. His enunciation was excellent. His voice seemed well adapted for broadcasting. This technically makes Harding the first president to have a speech broadcasted over radio. But Coolidge would be the first president to deliver a speech written specifically for radio broadcast. Meanwhile, the original Lincoln Memorial was in limbo. There were talks of moving it to Illinois or Indiana or even Wisconsin. The Commission of Fine Arts, responsible for the federal Lincoln Memorial, wanted to install it at Fort Stevens. Even Howard University, a historically black school chartered in 1867, offered to take the statue. But the reality was the memorial had been paid for and installed by residents of the District of Columbia. This hadn't been a federal memorial. This was one for the hometown team. Congress and the Commission of Fine Arts just swooped in and removed the statue without asking anyone what they wanted to have done with the statue. And what they wanted to have done with the statue was to put it back where it belonged. in front of the old city hall. Now, if you're not an American, this might come as a surprise to you, but the citizens of the District of Columbia are a bit of a blind spot when it comes to being represented. Though it sits between Maryland and Virginia, D.C. residents don't have voting senators or representatives in Congress because D.C. is technically not a state. It's why you'll often see D.C. license plates that read taxation without representation. D.C. residents pay federal tax without federal representation. In a weird way, the saga of the first Lincoln Memorial encapsulates what it means to be D.C., of federal decisions not taking local desires into consideration, of forgetting that, yeah, D.C. is the nation's capital, but it also belongs to the people who call it home. The 1868 Lincoln Memorial was finally reinstalled in November of 1922. A federal judge, Wendell Phillips Stafford, felt moved to write a touch of poetry in its honor. I'm not going to critique his work, but I did find myself kind of charmed by it.
Well, here I am once more in my old place. I'm rather glad. I've always liked old things. Old clothes to wear, old neighbors, and old books. And truth and justice, oldest things of all. Men called me old when really I was young. They nicknamed me Old Abe, honest Old Abe. I never had a title I liked more. I'm glad because there is a courthouse here. I feel at home. I did a stroke or two in that same line, and it might do no harm if witnesses should pause as they pass by, and now and then a lawyer should look up, not thinking of the martyr president, but merely of Old Abe, honest Old Abe.
Maybe nothing is really new. Harding was riding a return to normalcy conservative wave while embroiled in the Teapot Dome scandal. African Americans were shoved to the back of the crowd during the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial, and while Supreme Court Justice Taft never actually got stuck in a bathtub, he did think it was okay to forcibly sterilize people. And I still don't know what to do with my friends for this role-playing game. But I kind of feel that a tug of war for a small memorial to a complicated president has finally given me the slice-of-life flavor I've been missing from my game notes. And hey, now I know about President Harding's dog, Laddie Boy. Leave it to an old newspaper tycoon to know a dog would be good for his image. I mean, just look at this cute interview with Laddie Boy from July 17th, 1921. Aw, he thinks he's people. I mean... What? Are you kidding me? You made the dog racist? Here's to my earlenders, Xantha Pink, William Christopher, Chandra, and Mario B. Again, I can't thank you enough for all your continued support. I really hope you guys all like maps, and thank you to all my patrons in general. I hope you're enjoying the content so far. If there's anything else you'd like to see, if you have any suggestions, if you just want to say hi, please leave a comment either at my Twitter at Nella or at the Patreon page itself. Oh, by the way, by the time you watch this, I've already run the first session of the role-playing game I was mentioning, and I decided to see if my players could foil an attempt to blow up the Lincoln Memorial. So we had to end on a cliffhanger, but I'm pretty sure they've got this under control. I hope. If you like my content here, please check out my podcast, The Apocalypse Book Club. You can find us on Twitter at ApocalypseC, and you can listen to it on Google, Spotify, definitely on iTunes, and I'm trying to get it cross-posted to other platforms as well. So please like and subscribe here, there, and everywhere. See you next time.